Hello, faithful, and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective and smartest 49ers discussion and analysis. No hot takes here today. It's our draft reaction and recap show. I'm recording this on Monday evening. Wanted the full 3 days of the draft to sink in. Again, we're not about hot takes. We're going to be going over each pick, what it means for the roster, and any additional work the 49ers need to do. So we'll go through the 11 selections San Francisco made. We're going to be talking about the undrafted rookie free agent class of 6 players the Niners signed after the draft, rookie free agents that have been invited to rookie minicamp. We're going to be talking about the safety position, where it was revealed that safety Mustapha tore his ACL week 18 against the Cardinals. His availability for the first half of the season is in doubt. And we'll talk about any remaining needs coming out of the draft as the Niners are building their 90-man roster as they head to OTAs and training camp in July. So let's kick right off. Interesting 3 days, obviously headlined by the Shedeur Sanders craziness, his free fall, obviously stopping with the Cleveland Browns in the 5th round, the second quarterback that they selected after Dylan Gabriel. Very weird stuff happening with Cleveland, that whole Shedeur Sanders stuff. But San Francisco, I think this felt like a good first half of the draft, first 60 or 70% of the draft. And then on day 3, we had some head scratchers. But the fact that it is a 3-day draft, and if you're feeling good coming out of rounds 1, 2, and 3, and they had 2 picks in the 3rd round, and you're only really scratching your head with some of the day 3 picks and not anything that happened on Thursday or Friday, then you have to feel pretty good about what San Francisco came away with and the plan that they executed. Is it perfect? In my N of 1 opinion, no. I think a lot of us thought that they would address the offensive line sooner than they did in the 7th round. I was on record saying that I thought that they would draft 2 offensive linemen. We're going to get into that. I did not think there was a huge need to draft a running back. They did. I didn't think there was a huge need to draft a wide receiver. They drafted 2, one with their very last pick, who is more of a return specialist. I think there was a need to draft a quarterback, even though it was a 7th round pick and someone coming off of ACL reconstructive surgery in January, just 4 months ago. But the Niners made that selection as well. I think my reaction would have been different, maybe not as measured, not as objective, or being able to see the forest for the trees, if I had done this Saturday night or even yesterday, Sunday, versus doing it today, being able to let things simmer, digest what happened. The undrafted rookie free agent class of 6 players had no bearing on evening anything out, or, oh, I feel better about the O-line because they took another one as an undrafted rookie free agent. Not at all. But I think just being able to step away from it and think about it a little bit had me feeling better about the draft class. I will give a grade at the end of going through the 11 picks. But let's start at the top. So the first pick in the 1st round, the 11th pick overall, defensive end, Mykel Williams out of Georgia. Now, in my mock from last week, I had defensive tackle Derek Harmon going to the 49ers in the 1st round and defensive end Landon Jackson from Arkansas going to San Francisco in the 2nd round. So the order of the positions got flipped, but I did a whole lot of mock drafts where Mykel Williams was my 1st round selection. Never drafted Stewart out of Texas A&M, never drafted James Pierce, never drafted Mike Green, who fell quite a bit as well at defensive end, because I was of the assumption 2 months ago when they released Leonard Floyd that they were looking for a different body type at defensive end. And John Lynch came out and said as much a few days before the draft, which automatically people are saying, oh, it's a smokescreen. Why would John Lynch just say that? They're probably going to go for a speed rusher. And they didn't. And they kept the bigger, younger, more injury-prone defensive end in Yetur Gross-Matos and got rid of the older, more productive, but smaller defensive end in Leonard Floyd. So Michael Williams out of Georgia didn't have a huge year last year. I think 4 or 5 sacks, was playing through an ankle injury, but for most of the year, but he is one of, if not the best edge setters in the entire draft. The Niners went into this draft in the first 4 rounds wanting to beef up the defense, right? Because those were their first 5 picks, for 6 picks, if you want to take the second pick in the 4th round, but their first 5 picks were all defense. Michael Williams is going to give you some juice as a pass rusher. He'll work with D-line coach Chris Kosoric on that and learn from Bosa and learn from Yetur Gross-Matos. But I don't know if he's necessarily penciled in as the starter. I think it's going to, obviously he and Yetur are going to battle it out. But what's nice is all 3 defensive ends are edge setters. Obviously, Nick Bosa is in a class all his own. But between Williams and Yetur, that's going to be, I think, a nice battle to see who is the, and it might not even matter, right, who the starting defensive end is, because they'll both be in on pass rush downs, right, on 3rd downs. But Michael Williams from Georgia, a solid 1st-round pick, and apparently John Lynch and company were sold on him a year ago, and they were looking to trade up into the 7-8 range to draft Williams, but the board fell the way that they wanted to, taking DN D-line with their first pick. In the 2nd round, defensive tackle Alfred Collins out of Texas. Really like this pick as well. And in my mocks that I had Michael Williams going first, I had Alfred Collins going second. Big run-stuffing defensive tackle, 6'4", 330 plus, out of Texas. Not going to give you a tremendous amount in terms of pass rush, but now San Francisco is going away from that, right? Javon Hargrave, you don't want to say he was a mistake, because he was a piece of the puzzle that helped defensively the Niners get to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, but injured a couple months into the season. Last year, cut his base salary. They let him go. More of a penetrator, shooting the gap, more of getting upfield and putting pressure on the quarterback, which now that the philosophical shift is occurring between Alfred Collins, Jordan Elliott, Evan Anderson being your bigger defensive ends, Kalia Davis, smaller but stout, 310 on the nose, and you have Kevin Givens, 6'1", 280, smaller, someone that maybe is a bit more of a penetrator than the bigger guys. It seems like the priority is obviously stopping the run. That was terrible for most of last year, but definitely awful the last 6 weeks of the season. So Robert Saleh, while he's got some nice pieces to work with defensively in these first 5 picks, which we're going to go over additionally, he is going to need to scheme up pass rush, right? Because you're not getting pass rush from the interior. There is no more Javon Hargrave. There is no more DeForest Buckner. No more Eric Armstead. So they're going to have to figure out ways to simulate pressure. And this may be a team that blitzes more than they have in the past. I would be okay with that, especially with the number of youngsters on the defense. You may want some of them not thinking, pinning their ears back and getting after the quarterback versus how they're going to learn their cover 3. And I'm not convinced that there may not be a ton of starters coming out of this defensive class, maybe 2 at the absolute most. But I think there's going to be a different approach to how Saleh is going to call some defense, at least early on. Now, 3rd round pick, linebacker Nick Martin out of Oklahoma State. Smaller linebacker, 6 feet, 225. He's not 6'3" like Fred Warner, but he's also not 5'11" like Dre Greenlaw. Now, Dre Greenlaw, coming out of Arkansas, I believe a 4th or 5th round pick, wasn't highly touted. Had the same criticisms that Nick Martin has in terms of plays out of control. He's a heat-seeking missile. He needs to be more disciplined. He's got to get his eyes out of the backfield. He's got to be able to shed blocks better. Nick Martin is faster than Dre Greenlaw coming out of college, at least. Martin missed about half the season this past season at Oklahoma State, but had a huge year in 2023. And it looks like the Niners wanted a, sideline to sideline chase linebacker, right? We would know Fred Warner is very good in coverage. I mean, he's often following receivers and tight ends down the seam. In terms of what Nick Martin can provide there, it remains to be seen. He's more of a see ball, hit ball, chase ball type of player. The fact that he's a 3rd round pick, I would not say you pencil him in as a starter. I think D. Winters is going to give some competition. I think the linebacker, I'm drawing a blank on the name, that they picked up from the Titans, who's coming in from special teams, could give some competition. If Curtis Robinson is fully healthy, he could give some competition, but they needed to address linebacker. This was earlier than I thought that they would address it. And it was a pick in Nick Martin that went a lot earlier than a lot of people had him going. But at least for now, I will give the Niners scouts the benefit of the doubt over really anybody on Twitter, anybody saying that's a reach, including myself. And that actually dovetails into the next pick in the third round, cornerback Upton Stout from Western Kentucky, small corner, 5'8.5", about 190 pounds. Sounds like the Niners were really sold on him during the Senior Bowl, or at least, the way he approached the Senior Bowl. What he did at Western Kentucky, he was sticky. He played inside. He is a slot corner only. Playing inside, not the biggest cornerback, obviously, but it seems like they have, or Robert Saleh has a body type. Now, Demo has played in the slot at 5'10". Renardo Green can play in the slot at 6 feet. Harken back to Quan Williams. He was only 5'9", 5'9.5". Weighed about the same as Upton Stout. Played bigger than his size. Stout, lot of heart, fast, fluid, changes direction well, is not afraid to hit given his size. But what I want to be wary of for anybody, it's going to go for the next pick as well. And let's actually just get into that. So they addressed corner. Cornerback, I thought, would be maybe a position that they draft too, that you draft. You could take an Upton Stout in the third round. That was seen by many people as being early, even when the selection was made, because I've been doing a lot of mock drafts. I knew of Upton Stout. I've watched some tape, some film, some highlights. I know his measurables. My initial thought was, I wonder if they should have went outside corner there, because they know they have Demo that can play inside. I thought, oh, well, they'll go outside corner later in the draft. The only corner that they took was someone who is specifically a slot corner. Now, I wonder if that means that Trey Brown, coming over from Seattle, who's also not big, 5'9", 5'10", has played outside. Their outside corners right now, it seems like on the roster, Demo can play inside, outside, Renardo Green, and Darrell Luter. And I guess Trey Brown, possibly. And listen, this is April 28th. The roster isn't done yet. So any worries that any of us have about anything positionally with San Francisco, remember now, after the draft, the Niners can sign, or any team can sign, free agents, and it does not go against the comp pick formula for next year. So even though they, may have maxed out their 90-man roster, if someone's going to come available at any position, cornerback, safety, offensive line, we're going to get there. Obviously, none of these players, none of these undrafted rookie free agents are guaranteed anything. And if San Francisco can strike a deal to make their team better, to make a position stronger, I anticipate they're going to do it. Let's not, because the alternative is, are they not going to sign anybody else or make any transactions between now and when the regular season starts? Of course they're going to. Of course, it's just a matter of who and when. Now, their first fourth round pick. So that was day 1 and 2, right? And I think you feel pretty good with the positions that were selected and the players for the most part. Williams at defensive end, Alfred Collins at D tackle, Nick Martin at linebacker, Upton Stout at nickel cornerback. Definitely 3 needs, DN, D tackle, and linebacker. And the fourth sounds like they want to move Demo. I would imagine they're going to move Demo outside. And it's going to be maybe Upton Stout and Trey Brown battling for the nickelback spot. And we're going to get into day 3. Their first pick in the 4th round, defensive tackle CJ West. Now, he's somebody from Indiana. He's someone that I had going to the Niners in my mocks when I was drafting Michael Williams, drafting Alfred Collins. I was taking CJ West with one of my 2 4th-round picks, and I think I did with my final mock as well. Nose tackle. Again, 6'1", 6'2", 320, 325. He can give you maybe a little bit more pass rush than Alfred Collins could, but with their 2 defensive tackle picks, they're putting a premium on stopping the run up the middle, clogging up the middle, and giving Warner, and if it's Nick Martin or D. Winters or Jalen Graham or Curtis Robinson or Tatum Bethune, whoever, getting them freed up to attack ball carriers and take on, tight ends potentially in the running game. Very happy with that first 4th round pick. Now, the first head scratcher came later in the 4th round, and that's wide receiver Jordan Watkins out of Mississippi. It was a head scratcher at the time, one, because in basically all of my mocks, I did not have the Niners taking a wide receiver. I thought they were okay, even if Ayuk is going to be on the pup list with Jennings and Pearsall. You have Cowing. You still have people like Russell Gage and Isaiah Hodgins who are on the 90-man roster. I think veterans that Kyle would trust if they have to start the season without Brandon Ayuk. But I think as I thought about it more, all right, they did get rid of Debo. Obviously, we all know that. Juwan Jennings is on the last year of his deal. And I highly doubt now, especially drafting a fourth round wide receiver who is going to make the team, that they're going to extend a contract to Jennings to his liking. So if Debo's gone this year, Jennings is probably gone next year, and you have Demarcus Robinson, formerly of the Rams, who might be suspended for, say, a handful of games due to some off-the-field issues, a DUI or DWI, whatever it may be. So now if you're down Ayuk and Robinson, Jordan Watkins may have the ability to see some time this first 3-4 weeks of the season. Again, I still believe a Russell Gage and Isaiah Hodgins is in play. Tariq Owens, no. Trent Taylor, no, unless something happens with the return unit that's horrendous. But this was the first, initial head scratcher. Understand it now. He's got sub 4.4 speed. Apparently is a pretty good route runner. Blocks well in the running game. So to add wide receiver depth and now a receiver that's guaranteed to make a roster outside of any sort of injury, anything unfortunate, that takes us through the 4th round. But what I wanted to say about kind of the body types, everybody's drawing comps to certain players, right? And I said earlier, Upton Stout is a comp to Quan Williams. CJ West is a comp to DJ Jones, who was a former Niner who re-signed with the Broncos. Just because the body types are the same does not mean that that's the type of player they're going to be, right? Because if you want to go to the extreme, that's like saying any 6'4", 220-pound quarterback is going to be Tom Brady, right? Or anybody with a big arm is going to be Justin Herbert or Josh Allen or Aaron Rodgers or, any quarterbacks that have big arms. We're talking about accuracy or size at cornerback, It's nice when people want to make these comps. I just want to caution everybody, these players haven't even signed contracts yet. The jump up in competition from Michael Williams and Alfred Collins playing in the SEC to the pros, big jump. Then you have someone like an Upton Stout at Western Kentucky or some of these other players that are smaller schools. It's going to be a mega jump. Plus they're rookies, right? So we're all going to have patience. We're all going to be excited what they're doing in OTAs. And the first time Upton Stout knocks away a pass in OTAs, I'm sure people are going to call him the next coming of K'Wan Williams. But comparable body type does not mean comparable player. I think we all know that, but just something that I wanted to voice. Now we get into the 5th round. Running back was taken. I didn't think a running back was needed to be selected given who they have on the roster already. Obviously CMC. Guerendo was a draft pick last year. They re-signed Patrick Taylor, and they have Israel Bonaconda on the roster. Jordan James out of Oregon, 5'9", 205, built like Frank Gore. And Frank Gore is either a consultant with the team or part of the scouting department. He gave his blessing, and he is a hard runner like Frank Gore. He's a more powerful back than his size and weight would say. He is not a burner. Neither was Frank Gore. James, I think, has pretty good hands. He will get active in pass protection, which is important. And James is a player that's going to bump Patrick Taylor off the roster. You're not drafting Jordan James for him to be on the practice squad or not make the team. So I don't think the Niners are going to roll with 4 running backs with their initial 53. Maybe they do. And they release Patrick Taylor to put him on the practice squad, but it's going to be CMC, Guerendo, and Jordan James. Now, 2 skill positions back to back in day 3. Second of their 4th round picks and their first of their 5th round picks. After days 1 and 2 that Kyle was chomping at the bit. Like he wanted to have his glamour picks of running back, receiver. I thought a tight end would go. No tight end was drafting. We'll talk about that momentarily. But there were a lot of people out there, even though I was not mocking a receiver, really in any of my mocks to the 49ers. And running backs, I was waiting until the 7th round because we know how Kyle operates. 6th round, 7th round, undrafted rookie free agents. You're talking Eli Mitchell, Matt Breida, Jordan Mason. You're getting production out of no-name type players or players that are drafted very late. And Kyle Shanahan and Mike Shanahan's system has been taking unheralded running backs, Terrell Davis, 6th round pick in the late 90s, and turning them into 2,000-yard rushers or 1,000-yard rushers in Olandis Gary and Mike Anderson. Remember them from the Broncos? Didn't need to spend an early pick. And I've been saying for running back, 5th round at the earliest. They had no 6th round picks. They didn't trade up. They didn't trade down. They took all 11 picks, which is, again, something that I was wrong on. I said I was definitely adamant about the Niners are not trading back to get more picks because I don't even think 11 rookies are making this team, let alone the 13, 14, 15, 16 that some people were stating. And a lot of people were drafting skill positions on day 2 with either a 2nd or 3rd round pick. That was never on the table for me. That was never a consideration given the actual needs that they addressed at D end, D tackle, linebacker, and cornerback. Now, corner in the 3rd with Upton Stout, there I can maybe see, and we're going to talk about the offensive line, a guard or preferably a tackle in the 3rd instead of Stout in that spot. And then maybe you come back later on and maybe you trade up a couple of your 7th round picks into the 6th and get a cornerback. But the Niners stayed pat where they were with all 11 picks. So let's move to the 2nd pick of the 5th round, safety Marquez Siegel of Kansas State, another fast defensive back, runs sub 4.4, can play safety, has played nickel, slot corner, 5'11", 195, good size, adding more to the secondary. Now, I don't think they're going to transition him to any sort of corner or sub corner role. I think he's going to stay a safety, especially with the injury to Malik Mustapha, which we're going to talk about momentarily, or at least in a few minutes. Adding to the safety room, I wasn't sure about last week before I knew of the injury to Malik Mustapha, right? Because you have Mustapha, you had Mustapha healthy week 1. You have Jair Brown. You have Jason Pinnock, which I think a lot of people are sleeping on. 3-year starter for the Giants. Played his first year with the Jets under Robert Saleh, got released, thought they were going to be able to bring him back, and the Giants claimed him. But a 3-year starter, then you have Richie Grant from the Falcons, you have George Odom, you have Jalen Mahoney, you have quantity there, obviously. You want to get better at any position, and I'm sure the Niners think that bringing in Marquez Siegel has upgraded their safety room. But now I think we know why they drafted a safety, and it wasn't super early, right? It's the 5th round, pick 160 overall, because of Mustapha tearing his ACL in Arizona and the need to address the safety position. They at least did so in the draft with a rookie from Kansas State. No picks in the 6th round leads us to the 7th. Their first pick in the 7th round, probably the biggest head scratcher, although we're in the 7th round, guys. Right now we're taking flyers on, if you want to say boom or bust, or picks that could maybe pan out, not year 1, maybe not even, hopefully year 2, year 3, beyond. Quarterback Curtis Rourke out of Indiana, played on a partially torn ACL, had surgery in January. We'll get to that in a second. Had, I think, 29 touchdown passes in Indiana, an Indiana school record, led Indiana to the college football playoff. He's got a good arm. He's pretty accurate, not that mobile. He is far from a highly above average prospect, but he is probably someone that would have went in maybe the 4th or 5th round if he was healthy. And there is, I guess, the outside possibility he could be healthy for training camp in July. That would be in August. That would be 6 to 7 months out of an ACL. I don't imagine that happening. So I think he's going to be redshirted. He's going to be stashed. He's going to have to get released and I believe brought back to the roster, or maybe rookies handled differently. he's not going to be seeing the field this year. He's not going to be quarterback 3. If they keep 3 quarterbacks, it is going to be Tanner Mordecai, as number 3 behind Brock and Mac Jones. But, looking about what Kyle wants to do, Curtis Rourke reads the field pretty well. He's pretty accurate, and he has a pretty good arm. Probably when he gets healthy, maybe just as mobile as someone like a Mac Jones, maybe a little bit less mobile than Brock. But as long as he has some pocket awareness, and I can't say I've watched enough tape of him to really determine that yet in his final season at Indiana. But Mac Jones only signed for 2 years. Brock's deal will get done. This could be a player who has, 3 or 4 additional years if his contract tolls and this year doesn't count against his first 4 years in the league. After 2025, he could be under contract for another 4 years and could be groomed as the backup to Brock Purdy. So in the 7th round, I know we wanted more offensive line than the none we got so far. Taking a flyer on a potential backup, long-term backup quarterback, not a bad thing. Next pick, 22 picks later, first and only offensive lineman taken, guard Connor Colby out of Iowa. Iowa churns out offensive linemen, tight ends, and defensive backs to a certain degree. Now, Connor Colby's a 7th-round pick for a reason. He's a better run blocker than a pass blocker. Given the numbers and who they have in the offensive line room, I would say he's just about guaranteed to make the roster. Could he compete for the left guard spot with Ben Barch and Nick Zakiel and any others that are brought in? Sure. I guess so. I think he's a depth piece that could become of a more important piece next year when a whole lot of offensive linemen are going to be free agents, including tackle Colton McKivitz, guard Ben Barch, guard center Matt Hennessy, guard center Nick Zakiel, guard tackle Spencer Burford, and tackle Anthony Pleasance are all going to be free agents. The easier way to say this is the only 49ers currently on the roster, and Connor Colby nor any other rookie, they have not signed a contract yet. The only 49er offensive lineman on the roster or signed for 2026 are Trent Williams, no guarantee to return, of course, Jake Brendel, and Dominic Pooney. That is why, guys, I thought they would draft 2 offensive linemen. They did not. That's why I thought one of the 2 linemen would be a swing tackle. They did not. But that does not mean that they won't address swing tackle or offensive line more in the weeks and months to come. So Connor Colby, a depth piece right now. And we'll see, should he stick on the roster? And I believe he will, if he's in line for a bigger role in 2026. And the last pick, one of the last 5 picks in the draft, wide receiver, kick return man, Junior Bergen out of Montana. Again, another smallish receiver, about the same size as Jacob Cowing. You're talking like 5'10", 185, 190. Had multiple punt returns for touchdowns for Montana last year. Even Kyle Shanahan said he was drafted solely as a returner. He's a wide receiver by trade also, so we're going to throw him into the wide receiver room. He'll obviously get some playing time in the preseason once we get there in August. But they devoted another resource, a pick, to special teams. Brought in a long snapper, brought in a linebacker in free agency, brought in a safety, and actually a cornerback also in Ciaran Neal. In addition to their new special teams coordinator. They're taking special teams seriously. And with the rule change from touchbacks moving out from the 30 to now the 35, teams may be more inclined to actually keep the ball in the field of play. So Junior Bergen, his path to the roster is essentially beating out Jacob Cowing to be the return man. Now, in terms of what's going on with undrafted rookie free agents, they signed 6. Linebacker Stone Blanton out of Mississippi State, $92,000 guaranteed. They took Isaiah Nair from Nebraska, wide receiver, 6'3", 210, 5 touchdowns. Athletically, a really interesting player. He's probably destined for the practice squad. Niners did take another defensive back, but one that's even smaller than the one they drafted, at least weight-wise, Jacob Robinson, 5'10", 165 out of BYU, does have 11 interceptions in his career, so I guess he might be another person battling maybe for the backup nickel spot. Defensive lineman Sebastian Valdez out of Washington, 6'4", 304 last year, 48 tackles, 2 sacks, and a pass defense. Running back Corey Kiner out of Cincinnati, 5'10", 210, rushed for over 1,150 yards and had 16 receptions, battling to be one of the running backs on the practice squad. And the player that probably has the best chance of the undrafted rookie free agents making the team, guard Drew Moss out of Colorado State, 6'4", 305, started all 13 games at guard last year for the Rams. So in terms of, any undrafted rookie free agents getting a tryout at minicamp, the most notable being kicker Kenny Almendarez out of Louisiana. He was the Lou Groza Award winner, best kicker in the nation. He'll give Jake Moody some competition, and we'll see if they sign a veteran as well to have like maybe a 3-man competition in camp. We shall see. Now, let's go back to the offensive line, right? So, and then I'll give my grade in terms of the draft. So after Jordan Watkins was picked in the 4th round, the Niners obviously didn't draft Connor Colby into the 7th, but Jordan Watkins went round 4, pick 138 overall. Colby wasn't drafted until round 7, 249 overall. Between then, the Niners could have had their selection of these rookie guards. Jalen Rivers out of Miami, Marcus Mbow out of Purdue went to the Giants, Jackson Slater out of Sacramento State, and Garrett Dellinger of LSU. Tackles, if they wanted to draft a swing tackle, which they obviously didn't. Branson Taylor out of Pitt available. Ajani Cornelius out of Oregon available. Chase Lunt, UConn. Cameron Williams, Texas. Jack Wilson, Wisconsin. And Mason Richmond out of Iowa, another Iowa offensive lineman. There was no drafting ahead a year like we saw, at least for the offensive line, like we saw last year with picking up Renardo Green to take Travarius Ward's place, Malik Mustapha for Talanoa Hufanga. The year before that, D. Winters and Jalen Graham, with an eye on them, knowing that they probably weren't going to be able to re-sign Dre Greenlaw, who injured his quad. We're not sure the severity of that yet, but prayers up for him. Obviously, he's a Bronco now, along with Hufanga. We're wishing him no ill will. Probably a freak type of thing. And you don't know, with this whole butterfly effect thing, changing things in the timeline. If he had signed with San Francisco, maybe he doesn't tear his quad. Maybe something different happens the day he does that. Who knows? But it does shine a light on the injury-prone nature that Dre Greenlaw is trying to shake. But hopefully it's nothing that causes him to miss time into the regular season. So the offensive line is going to be wasn't addressed significantly in the draft. One in the 7th round, an undrafted rookie free agent. I think they have a tackle from Tennessee, I believe, coming in for a rookie tryout. Don't quote me on that. The biggest one of note, obviously, is the kicker, place kicker. But if they were going to, even look at guards after the draft, which they signed Drew Moss, Joshua Gray from Oregon State was available after the draft. Luke Kandra from Cincinnati. Marcus Tate from Clemson, 4-year starter with Clemson. And tackles Logan Brown out of Kansas and Holland Pierce out of Rutgers. Now, just because they're available after the draft as an undrafted rookie free agent, you're in a bidding war now. Right now, you're bidding against teams that want to bring them in. You're talking about guaranteed money. But again, these were still draftable players also. They could have drafted in the 5th, in the 7th, in the 6th, if they packaged up some 7th round picks to refortify the offensive line. I've said in previous podcasts that I think 49er fans are going to be disappointed with how the offensive line, the starters, look this year as compared to last year. And the only spot that's going to have a new starter was more likely going to be left guard. I'm going to be penciling in Ben Barch there. There's the outside possibility, maybe Matt Hennessy could beat out Jake Brendel to be the center, although per Kyle Shanahan, he doesn't envision that happening. It's Jake Brendel's job to lose. Now, there could be injury or something, of course. And a lot of people wanted Colton McKivitz out there. Well, they didn't draft a swing tackle, so McKivitz is probably the starter. But we'll see what they're going to look at on the free agent market. And let's just quickly go over that. So in terms of, players that are out there at tackle, Joseph Noteboom, formerly of the Rams. You have Jedrick Wills, Andrus Peat, Isaiah Wynn, Andre Dillard, who played with the Eagles, among other teams. So you have, among others, there's options at tackle, and there are some options at guard. My favorite being Dalton Risner, out of Kansas State, played with the Broncos for his first 3 or 4 years, was with the Vikings the last year or two. I think he'd be someone that could compete for an opening or a starting spot at left guard. So there's obviously players available, as there are players at safety. We talked about Mustapha tearing his ACL in week 18. Jason Pinnock, Jair Brown, Richie Grant, George Odom, Marquez Siegel, the rookie out of Kansas State. You have Mahoney. And a lot of people are right here saying, oh, they need to bring in a veteran because Mustafa's hurt. Now, yeah, if the price is right and you can't just kidnap somebody and have them play for your team, he's going to want to sign. But some of the more notable free agents, Justin Simmons, Julian Blackmon, formerly the Colts, Kayvon Wallace, Marcus May, who was with the Jets, recently the Chargers, and Ryan Neal. So there are options, and people keep throwing out Tayshaun Gibson, I suppose, at 34 years old. I mean, he was on the practice squad for the latter half of last year and then was signed to the active roster for the last couple of games. I guess that's a possibility also. The Niners aren't done, guys. The Niners, by a long shot, the Niners aren't done. There's going to be transactions in the days, weeks, and months ahead, especially with some of these undrafted rookie free agents. And hell, any rookie free agent that's getting a rookie tryout, I think this week or next, may get an invite to camp and may bump off one of the 6 undrafted rookie free agents that the Niners signed the day after the draft, or the night after the draft, the night after and day after the draft, excuse me. So this is completely fluid. Whatever San Francisco's 90-man roster looks like today is going to be very different a week from now and very different a month from now until they actually get to training camp, but it'll still be moving around. But let's look at the draft class as a whole, just the 11 players. We're not going to get into the undrafted rookie free agents. I'm going to give this draft class right now a B. I think this is a solid B. And if, like I said at the top, if you're scratching your head about day 3, but not day 1 and 2, then you have to feel good about where the team netted out with the players they took, because you have someone that could start in Mykel Williams, could start in Alfred Collins, could start in Nick Martin, could start in the slot in Upton Stout. Hell, when you get into day 3, you have someone who could start in CJ West at defensive tackle. I don't think both tackles are going to start. I think one tackle will start. The other will see some serious snaps in that D tackle rotation. And these 2 D tackles, they're going to bump off the roster one of Jordan Elliott, Khalil Davis, Evan Anderson, and Kevin Givens, because I think they're only going to keep 5 defensive tackles on the roster, and they should keep 5 defensive ends on the roster. And Mykel Williams may be someone who's going to bump maybe someone like a Robert Beal, or more than likely probably Drake Jackson. It's probably going to be Bosa, Williams, Yetur Gross-Matos, Sam O, and Robert Beal as your 5 defensive ends. Someone like a Jonathan Garvin is going to wind up on the practice squad. But again, a lot can happen between now and May 1st, June, July, August, up until that first week of September, where teams have to, or maybe second week of September, where teams have to solidify their 53-man roster. I'm not going to do a 53-man roster now. I have, I think, a pretty good idea of the players from this squad that are going to make the team. But a solid B. First 5 picks we have to feel really good about: Williams, Collins, Martin, Stout, and West. Jordan Watkins and maybe Jordan James are like the pivot point. I can see what they were doing with those picks and positions. And now I understand, and we all understand, the Marquez Siegel pick, given what happened to Malik Mustapha. And if we're going to scratch our heads in the 7th round about Curtis Rourke or Junior Bergen, we're even taking a lineman there. But hell, you want to take a lineman in the 7th round versus not taking a lineman at all. If we're really scratching our head about 3 7th round picks, then what are we ultimately complaining about, right? So I don't want to get too high or too low on this draft class. At least first blush, we're not going to go for at least 2 or 3 years anyway. But I'll give it a solid B. I think there's a lot of players with some upside and some intriguing players. Someone even like a Curtis Rourke that even if they are, put on IR and redshirted for his first year, there could be some decent long-term upside in a backup quarterback. So that's going to conclude the podcast for today. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule for making us part of our list of your listening routine. Excuse me. NBA playoffs still in full swing, and NFL draft is behind us, but transactions will keep happening. Our next podcast potentially later in the week, if there's anything noteworthy like a Brock Purdy extension that happens or any additional free agent signings. But the next one, probably safe to say, is going to be sometime early next week or over the weekend. The draft is behind us. It felt like it took forever to get here, but it also felt like it went by pretty quickly. And we had the extra month of analyzing draft picks since the Niners did not make the playoffs this year. But the draft is in the books. Obviously, a lot of people have their grades and their gripes about picks, etc. Do I agree with every pick? Of course not. Do I agree with the positions that were picked? Of course not. Do I agree with the ignoring of some positions or the not doubling up of some positions that I thought San Francisco should? Of course not. Right? But the proof is going to be in the pudding once the players get out there, put pads on, start running around, hitting well, they're not going to be doing that in OTAs, but joint practices, training camp, preseason. Excited to see the draft class in action. But that still is a couple months away, but there will still always be Niner news to talk about, and I hope you share it with us. Until now and when we speak again, everyone stay happy, healthy, and safe. We'll talk soon. Take care.